I still vividly remember the moment my hand trembled as I signed the final contract. The name Rachel Morgan, 29 years old, was boldly printed on the white paper, tied for the first time to an undeniable asset: my very own apartment in the heart of the city. It wasn't just four walls, it was living proof of all the years I toiled, sacrificing fun evenings and vacations to work myself to exhaustion. Many say a woman approaching 30 needs a family, a shoulder to lean on. But me? I had a mortgage contract and a shiny set of keys, both bearing my name. The first time I stood in the sunlit living room, basking in the golden afternoon light, I felt like all my efforts had finally paid off. The floor-to-ceiling windows cast sunlight onto the glossy oak floors, everything exactly as I'd envisioned. I'd compared over a dozen granite samples to choose the kitchen countertop and spent 2 months' salary on a premium kitchen cabinet set. Every detail, from the cream-colored curtains to the tulip vase on the dining table, was the work of one person: me. Yet that joy was quickly overshadowed by a cold rain called family. The doorbell rang on a Saturday morning and my heart raced. I'd prepared meticulously for this moment: a chic navy dress, lightly curled hair, a smile ready to bloom. I wanted my parents, Linda and Robert, to truly see the achievement I'd worked so hard for. And of course, my sister Emily would be there too. As soon as I opened the door, my mother stepped in with a scrutinizing gaze. She didn't look at me first. Her eyes swept the living room like a stern judge scoring a performance. "Oh, Rachel, darling." She tiptoed forward, air kissing near my cheek, her Chanel perfume overwhelming. Then she stepped back, squinting around. Cute. But if you'd hired a professional interior designer, this place would have so much more personality. Do you know who Emily worked with? A designer even Hollywood stars book months in advance. I smiled, but my heart stung a little. Of course, she had to mention Emily. My father followed, barely glancing around, engrossed in his phone. "Traffic was awful," he muttered absently. "Do you have free parking? Any validation?" Before I could answer, Emily, my younger sister, appeared. Her golden hair cascaded perfectly, designer sunglasses perched casually on her head, her fingers glued to her phone. She glanced at the apartment and said curtly, "Cute, smaller than I expected." "It's a two-bedroom," I replied, keeping my tone even. "Plenty for one person." Emily shrugged as if my opinion didn't matter. I led them on a tour, proudly showing off every detail I'd painstakingly chosen: south-facing windows that caught sunlight all day, a modern kitchen with an oven I'd negotiated down by $3,000. My father nodded absent-mindedly, eyes still on his phone. Then Emily interrupted. "Did you guys see my new post? 5,000 likes in under 12 hours. That activewear brand wants to extend my sponsorship deal." Instantly, my parents crowded around Emily's phone, their faces lighting up. "Let me see, that's amazing," my mother exclaimed. "My girl's a social media star." "I knew it," my father added, finally looking up from his emails. "Emily's going to make a big name for herself." I stood there, stranded in my own kitchen, feeling like I'd vanished from the frame. I blurted out, "I got promoted last week, from manager to director in just 3 years. It usually takes at least 5. "That's nice, dear," my mother said without looking up from Emily's phone. "Emily, show me more pictures." I bit my lip. For years, this script had played on repeat. I poured my heart into achievements, only for them to be buried under Emily's glittering shadow. As they moved to the balcony, I brought out a tray of specialty coffee I'd bought from a local roastery. "Anyone want coffee? This blend's famous with a subtle chocolate note." No one answered. They were all gathered around Emily, watching her pose for a selfie with the city's skyline behind her. "This view is gorgeous," Emily said excitedly. "It'll be perfect for my new wellness series. Just needs a little editing to remove those power lines." My mother nodded eagerly, and my father mumbled, "Yeah, it's decent." I stood silently behind them, the coffee cooling in my hands. In that moment, I realized my apartment, the symbol of my independence and hard work, didn't impress them. To them, it was just a backdrop for Emily's Instagram photos. A mix of sadness and irony flashed through my mind. Even the walls I'd bought with my sweat and tears still belonged to Emily, at least in my parents' eyes. When they left early because Emily had, An important meeting, the apartment fell silent again. I sat on the couch, watching the late afternoon sun spill across the wood floor, wondering, would there ever be a day when they truly saw me, Rachel, not just a dim version next to Emily? I thought buying this apartment would change that. I was wrong. I'm sharing this story not just to vent, but because I believe many have been in similar situations, striving hard, achieving something to be proud of, only to be overlooked by family or those closest to you. Have you ever been like me, hoping for a word of praise from loved ones, only to get comparisons or silence? If so, leave a comment so I know I'm not alone. And stay tuned, because what happened after this visit would change my life in ways no one could have predicted. If you think family favoritism is just fleeting praise or criticism, try living an entire childhood in it like I did. You'd see it's like a rigged game where you work tirelessly, but the prize is always reserved for someone else. In my family, that prize always went to Emily. I still remember being 12, winning a citywide essay contest. My essay was published in the local paper, and my teacher called my parents to congratulate them. I came home, clutching the fresh-inked newspaper, buzzing with excitement. This time, I thought, they'd surely be proud. My mother glanced at it and nodded faintly. "That's nice, dear." My father just asked, "Did you get any cash prize?" I shook my head. He sighed. "Keep trying, then." That evening, Emily walked in with a new pair of jeans my mother had bought her because they were too cute. My parents immediately fawned over her, praising her as if she'd won a Nobel Prize. I sat quietly at the dinner table, the newspaper suddenly heavy in my hands. That was the first time I realized recognition in my family didn't come from effort. It came from Emily, whether she did anything or not. As we grew up, the gap only widened. I studied hard, earning a full scholarship to college. One evening, I eagerly brought home the scholarship letter, hoping for beaming smiles from my parents. "Oh, that's good. Less tuition burden for us," my father said, eyes fixed on the financial news on TV. My mother added, "That means we can use the savings to support Emily's art classes. You know she needs opportunities to pursue her passions." Just like that, my achievement became an excuse to funnel more money to Emily. I wasn't just denied celebration, I became the budget liberator for my sister's indulgences. One of the most painful memories was my high school graduation. I was valedictorian, my speech earning thunderous applause. But when the ceremony ended, I turned to the family seating section. It was empty. Where were they? Later, I learned Emily had a friendly basketball game with another school team that day. A meaningless match, but my parents chose to cheer for her. "We'll watch the recording," my mother explained when they got home, as if that made up for it. Emily giggled. "The game was so fun, I scored 3 points." Can you imagine the feeling? The most important moment of my life, one I thought would be a family milestone, turned into an ordinary evening with a dusty VHS tape. Meanwhile, even Emily's minor accomplishments were treated like national events. Once, she placed third in a school art contest, a scribbled watercolor painting. But my parents turned the backyard into a celebration, complete with balloons and a cake. Neighbors came, thinking Emily had won a statewide championship. I stood in a corner, holding a paper plate with overly sweet cake that tasted bitter in my throat. Why were my rewards always diminished to "nice try," while Emily's smallest feats were inflated into victories? This pattern became ingrained. In my sophomore year of college, I worked part-time at the library, saving every penny for books and food. Meanwhile, Emily called home crying, wanting to go to Europe for artistic inspiration. Within a week, my parents dipped into savings to fund her 3-month trip. "You have to understand," my mother told me. "Emily needs these experiences to grow. You're fine. You always manage on your own." That phrase haunted me for years. "You're fine." To them, I was always fine, meaning I didn't need attention, support, or love. All their resources, all their focus went to Emily, the fragile child they thought always needed protection. If I sound bitter, I'm sorry, but isn't it ironic? When I earned a scholarship, it was a reason to give Emily money. When I was valedictorian, they were busy cheering at her basketball game. When I worked extra jobs, they funded Emily's inspiration trips. No matter what I did, the result was the same. I was the excuse for Emily to get more. People say parental love is shared equally among children. In my family, love was a pie. Emily got the lion's share, while I was left with crumbs and a reminder. You're strong, you can handle it. Once I dared to push back. When I learned my parents planned to use my grad school savings to fund Emily's online clothing business, I broke down and shouted, "What about me? Why do I always have to give in?" My father glared at me. "You're so selfish, Rachel. Family means sharing. Emily needs this chance, and you always have everything." Everything? Did I have everything? I had a tiny dorm room, late nights working to exhaustion, and a heart craving basic acknowledgement. If that's everything, their definition was worlds apart from reality. Perhaps this string of injustices forged my tough exterior. I learned to stay silent, swallow tears, and find joy in my own achievements rather than family recognition. But don't be fooled. Those wounds didn't vanish. They lay dormant, waiting to tear open again. And that chance came years later, when the car I'd painstakingly saved for was sold by my own parents to help Emily. But to understand why that was the final straw, you need to see the foundation of a lifetime of favoritism I've just described. If you're still listening, you might feel a memory stirring. Maybe it's the time you aced a test, but your parents only asked about your sibling. Maybe it's a forgotten birthday because your brother or sister had bigger things going on. If so, you'll understand my mix of humiliation, helplessness, and a quiet, burning resolve. There are moments in life when you think, this is the reward for all those years of grinding. For me, that moment came when my trembling hand held the keys to my first SUV. The soft click as the key turned in the ignition was a small sound, but a bold declaration. I was no longer the one who had to yield, take crowded buses, or beg my parents for help. I had my own car, bought with my own money. I remember that morning vividly. The sky an unbelievable blue, sunlight glinting off the silver SUV like a gem in the parking lot. The salesman shook my hand, saying warmly, "Congratulations, Miss Morgan, great choice." Great? No, for me, it was a triumph. 3 years of saving, countless times skipping new shoes or friend vacations, all culminated in that moment. I ran my hand over the steering wheel, the new leather smell filling my senses, pride swelling like never before. I did this. Naturally, like all my achievements, I wanted my family to witness it. I pictured my father patting my shoulder, saying, "Well done, kid," or my mother tearing up, "We're so proud of you." I even hoped for a fleeting look of admiration from Emily. Just a moment would have been enough. So, that Sunday, I drove my brand new SUV to my parents' house. I parked neatly in the driveway, sunlight catching the glossy paint. I stepped out, keys in hand, heart racing. My father glanced over from the porch. "Oh, new car?" His tone was casual, like I'd just bought a rice cooker. "Yeah," I said eagerly. "I negotiated a great deal, $3,000 off the sticker price. It's got a 5-star safety rating, too." He grunted, then pulled out his phone to scroll the news. My mother stepped out next, her eyes briefly scanning the car. "It's nice, but silver's a bit plain. White, like Emily's, would have been classier." I bit my lip, swallowing a retort. Then Emily appeared. Of course, she had to make an entrance, golden hair flowing, sunglasses perched on her head. She circled the car, frowning like an appraiser, then said bluntly, "Why'd you bother? I'd just marry rich and get cars, bags, even a mansion." My mother laughed. My father chuckled. "She's so witty," they said, eyes sparkling. I stood frozen, my smile stiffening. A bitter thought echoed. Emily's wit is worth more than my 3 years of sweat. I invited them inside. At dinner, I tried again. "I'm really proud I bought this car myself. It's a big milestone for me." My father poured wine, not looking up. "Good, as long as you can afford the insurance." "Don't forget maintenance," my mother added. "Cars like that guzzle gas." Emily, glued to her phone, suddenly squealed, "My new post just hit 10,000 likes!" The table's attention snapped to her, my car and I forgotten. I sat there, chewing lasagna, feeling my happiness snuffed out by an invisible cold wind. I realized, to them, my SUV was just a depreciating asset. Emily's Instagram post was the real cause for celebration. Driving back to my apartment that night, I gripped the wheel, choking back tears. Streetlights reflected off the windshield, their streaks stinging my eyes. I wondered, would I ever be enough to make them proud? Or will my efforts always be a backdrop to Emily's performance? The car purred smoothly, but my heart was bumpier than a potholed street. I thought I'd climbed a new rung of independence, but I was still tethered by my family's dismissive gaze. You might think, Rachel, why care what they think? Isn't success enough? Trust me, I wish I could be that detached. But when it's your parents and your own sister, when you've spent a lifetime craving their acknowledgement only to get mocking smiles, their silence cuts like a dull blade. It doesn't kill you outright, but it bleeds you slowly. So my four-wheeled pride, my dream SUV, shone for just a few hours. Then it was drowned in laughter and jabs. I thought I'd finally achieved something undeniable, but my family found a way to dismiss it with a casual remark and a chuckle. If you find my story intriguing and want to know what happens next, comment why. If it feels unremarkable, be honest and leave an N. Your feedback will tell me if I'm sharing something others out there have lived through too. Some moments in life are anticipated for years, but for me, they felt like a stage where I was forced to be a prop for the star, Emily's wedding. That day, everyone saw it as a modern fairy tale. But I knew better. It was a lavish performance, meticulously staged for Emily to shine, while I stood on the sidelines, fading into the spotlight. I remember that morning in the luxurious hotel room, glowing with chandelier light. Emily's wedding dress hung in the center, a cascade of white silk draping the king-sized bed, $25,000 for a dress she'd wear once. I sat in the corner staring at the pale pink bridesmaid dress I was forced to buy, costing a month's salary. "My girl's a princess," my mother gushed, voice trembling as she watched Emily twirl in her gown. My father snapped photos, eyes gleaming. Me? I zipped up the bridesmaid dress, looked in the mirror, and saw a stranger. The washed-out color drained my skin, the stiff design making me feel like a wooden block. It wasn't a dress to flatter me. It was a costume to make me the perfect backdrop for Emily's radiance. If you've seen my earlier videos on this channel, you know what Emily's like. Always favored, always praised, even for the smallest things. If you haven't, check out my story about our school years, when I earned a full scholarship while Emily barely graduated, yet she got a grand party. This wedding was that pattern amplified 1,000 times. The hotel venue was in the city center, draped in fresh flowers from the entrance to every table. A live orchestra played classic love songs, the menu boasting French foie gras, Wagyu beef, and premium Italian wine. The guest list was a who's who: business tycoons, politicians, celebrities. Emily picked the right man, my mother whispered to me as the reception began, gazing at Tyler, the groom, like he was the family's ticket to high society. Her next words hit me like a punch. "Rachel, this is real success. Marrying a successful, reputable man with wealth, that's the most important thing in a woman's life." I turned to her, searching for a hint of jest. But her eyes glowed with earnest admiration. It felt like my decades of education, work, and promotions were tossed into the trash with one sentence. Throughout the ceremony, I played my assigned role, smiling, holding the bride's train, standing beside her in family photos that would later adorn my parents' walls. Those photos, I knew, would be labeled Emily's wedding, with me as an incidental bystander caught in the frame. When the MC gave a toast, I caught Tyler's eye. He smiled politely, but there was a wary glint, as if he'd already sensed Emily wasn't the perfect princess she seemed. Maybe he thought he could fix her. I didn't have the heart to tell him. That vortex ran deeper than he could imagine. At the reception, I sat alone at a side table, watching my parents parade around, boasting, "Our daughter married Tyler. His family has political connections. Such a bright future." Guests nodded and congratulated, while I nibbled on overly sweet wedding cake that stuck in my throat. Everyone saw Emily as a jewel, while I became a shadow. I wondered, if I ever got married, would they be this proud? Or would they just compare it to Emily's and shake their heads in disappointment? Isn't it bitter? All my hard work earned me cold glances, while a flashy marriage, whose longevity was uncertain, was hailed as the greatest achievement. If you've been in a similar spot, you know the feeling. Standing amid a lavish party, music blaring, glasses clinking, yet your heart holds only a cold void. I smiled without joy, clapped without sound. As the reception ended, I slipped out of the ballroom, my heels pinching painfully. Outside, the night wind whipped my bridesmaid dress, one I'd never wear again. I looked up at the hotel lights, my heart heavy. Driving my SUV home that night, I thought, one day, this shiny facade will crack, and the truth will spill out. Emily can't live off the spotlight forever, and my parents can't keep pretending they don't see me. I didn't know how soon that premonition would come true, but I was right. A few years later, Emily would knock on my parents' door with nothing but empty hands. That's a story for later chapters. They say a career milestone is a life-changing moment, the kind where you walk out of your boss's office smiling, knowing every sleepless night, every pressure, every cold coffee was worth it. For me, that moment came when I was officially named marketing director at 30. 3 years from mid-level manager to director, a pace that surprised even seasoned colleagues. I remember my heart racing as my boss said, "Rachel, you didn't just do your job well, you reshaped the department's direction. We trust you with this role." Those words rang like a victory anthem. I thought, this time they'll have to be proud. They couldn't dismiss that I, the fine daughter, had achieved something greater than a lavish wedding. That evening, I drove my SUV to my parents' house, buzzing with excitement. I'd rehearsed a little speech, planning to tell the story in a way that would impress. I even printed a congratulatory card from my colleagues, intending to give it to my mother as a keepsake. My parents had set the table, and Emily was there, as always. Perfect blonde hair, glossy nude manicure, phone never leaving her hand. I took a deep breath, smiling brightly. "I have great news," I began. Today, I was officially promoted to marketing director. In 3 years, 2 years faster than usual. This is a huge milestone for my career. I waited, expecting a moment of silence for the news to sink in, but the only sound was a ting from Emily's phone. "Oh, look at this!" Emily squealed, turning her screen to our parents. "Tyler just wired the deposit for my new Range Rover, pearl white, fully loaded. It's coming this week." I froze. My mother leaned forward, eyes sparkling. "Oh my gosh, that's amazing. You deserve it, Emily. You'll look stunning in that Range Rover." My father jumped in. "I need to check the specs. What's the engine? Does it have auto parking?" Emily scrolled excitedly, rattling off details about leather seats, premium speakers, and a panoramic sunroof. I sat there, my director announcement barely registering, swallowed by their chatter. The congratulatory card in my hand felt like a worthless scrap. I tried again. "But I also wanted to say, this director role means I'll lead strategy for the entire East Coast. I've been invited to speak at an international conference next month." "That's nice, dear," my mother said, eyes still on Emily's phone. "Emily, what color interior, white or beige?" I swallowed hard. At a table full of delicious food, I felt invisible. The kicker came when Emily giggled, adding, "Oh, with this Range Rover, I'll need a new orange Hermes bag to match. I ordered it through a contact. Should arrive in 2 months." My father whistled, "Classy." My mother clapped, "My girl has such taste." I sat across, my forced smile tightening. I thought, so my directorship, earned through sweat, tears, and sleepless nights, is worth less than an Hermes bag Emily casually mentioned. Driving home, I stared through the windshield. The city glowed, but my heart was dark. I recalled every career moment, presenting to dozens of executives, hands shaking but voice steady, patiently negotiating with tough clients to save big deals, collapsing from exhaustion at 2 a.m. in the office, rushed to the ER by colleagues. My parents never saw those moments. And now, at the peak of my dreams, they didn't care. What they cared about was Emily's Range Rover and her Hermes bag. I know many out there have felt this. You achieve something massive, but at home your family barely nods, then gushes over someone else's trivial news. It's not just disappointment, it's a gnawing pain, like your efforts are erased with a snap. That night, parking at my apartment, I didn't get out right away. I sat in the dark, gripping the wheel. I wondered, will they ever truly see me? Or am I forever just a backdrop to Emily's show? In that moment, I knew this feeling of being overshadowed wouldn't vanish. It would only grow until it exploded. And as I suspected, Emily's glossy facade soon cracked. Her marriage wasn't the fairy tale my parents believed. But that's for the next chapter. If you've ever had your success dimmed by someone else's superficial shine, share your feelings. I want to know I'm not alone in this disappointment. Some phone calls you answer knowing your evening's about to be upended. For me, that moment came on a Tuesday afternoon. I was signing off on a new campaign when my phone buzzed. The caller ID read, "Mom." I picked up and instantly her sobbing voice filled the line. "Rachel, Tyler left Emily." I closed my eyes, leaning back in my chair. Half of me wanted to say, I knew this day would come. The other half was just tired of the familiar script. Emily messes up, my parents make her the victim, and I'm the reluctant audience. My mother recounted it like a tragic movie script. Tyler had packed his bags, left divorce papers on the kitchen counter, and walked out. He accused Emily of being shallow, wasteful, and clueless about marriage. His words were unforgivably cruel, she said. As she sobbed, my mind flashed to familiar images: Emily's extravagant trips, her untouched designer bags, her lavish birthday parties funded by Tyler. I couldn't feign surprise. Tyler did what anyone would eventually do. "You have to come home," my mother pleaded. "Your sister needs family now more than ever." I glanced at the clock. Nearly 8 p.m., with a stack of documents still on my desk. I sighed. "Mom, I have work. I'll come this weekend." "Rachel!" Her voice sharpened. "You can't be that selfish. This is a marriage falling apart. Emily's devastated. You need to be here." Selfish. That word again. To her, prioritizing my work was selfish, but Emily squandering her marriage into ruin was just devastation. That weekend, I drove to my parents' house. The place was unchanged. Emily's giant wedding photo hung in the living room like a bitter caricature. Now, it was partly obscured by an open suitcase. Emily sat there, mascara streaked, in baggy sweats, looking like a living testament to a fallen princess. "Rachel," she whined when she saw me, "I have nothing left. He left me all alone." I sat on the couch, suppressing the truth. "You have nothing left? Or you never had anything but Tyler's credit card?" My mother rushed over, wrapping Emily in her arms like a bullied child. "My poor baby," she whispered. "You don't deserve this. Men are so heartless." My father nodded, his eyes full of pity. "Stay here, Emily. This house is always yours." I gave a bitter chuckle. This house was never always mine. For me, it was a place to learn endurance, to stomach comparisons and dismissals. But for Emily, it was an open door, no matter how big her mistakes. At dinner, I gently probed, did Tyler give any specific reasons, or was it just a mismatch? Emily tossed her hair, indignant. "He said I spent too much, didn't plan for the future, but I just wanted to enjoy life. I deserve nice things, don't I?" My mother jumped in. "Exactly, my girl should live like a princess. If a man can't handle that, he's not good enough." I looked at them, my throat tightening. No one in the room would admit Emily had leached off someone else's wallet. Even in failure, she was glorified. I washed dishes, hands trembling with anger. In the kitchen mirror, I saw myself, tired eyes, lips pressed tight. I wondered, would my failures ever be cushioned like this? I knew the answer, never. If I fell, they'd criticize, call me irresponsible, remind me I should have known better. But Emily, she was always the victim. That night, on my old bed, I heard my mother comforting Emily next door. "You'll get through this, Emily. You're young, beautiful, a better man will come." I turned to the wall, tears spilling. Not for Emily, but for the abandonment I felt in my own family. I thought, one day, they'll see their blind favoritism has devoured this family, and I wasn't sure I'd stick around to watch. The next morning, I left early. Emily was at the table, eating pancakes my mother made. I said goodbye to my parents. They nodded, eyes fixed on Emily. I walked out, heart heavy. Driving back to my apartment, I told myself, Emily's failures are cushioned, but no matter how successful I am, I'll never be enough. But one day, that balance will shift. I didn't expect that one day to come so soon. It started with a message that left me stunned and choked. I'd won an international competition, with a $15,000 European trip as the prize. A gift my parents would soon try to take, for Emily. Believe it or not, happiness sometimes arrives when you least expect it. For me, it came from an email I initially thought was spam. The subject glowed on my screen. "Congratulations, you're the winner of the International Marketing Award." I opened it, heart pounding. The prize was a $15,000 European trip, all expenses paid. 2 weeks exploring 5 countries: Italy, France, Switzerland, Spain. And most importantly, this wasn't luck. I won because my marketing strategy was rated the highest. It was the fruit of my passion, my real ability. I laughed alone in my apartment. I thought, this time they'll have to be proud. They couldn't ignore this victory. That evening I called them. "Mom, Dad, I have great news," I said, voice trembling with excitement. "I won an international award. They're giving me a $15,000 trip to Europe. I'll visit Italy, France, Switzerland." I paused, waiting. 1 second, 2. Then my mother spoke, her voice overly gentle. "Rachel, dear, you should give that trip to Emily." I thought I misheard. "What, give it to Emily?" "Yes," she continued. "She's just gone through a marriage shock. She needs healing. A trip like that would help her find joy again." My father chimed in, firm. "Rachel, you're always fine. You have a good job, your own apartment, a car. Emily has nothing. She needs this trip more than you." For a moment, I was speechless. So many times before, I'd swallowed tears and nodded, giving up money, attention, love. But this time, a different emotion surged, not resignation, but fire. "No," I said it sharply, decisively, like I'd waited my whole life to say it. Silence on the other end. Then my mother erupted. "Rachel, you're so selfish. It's just a trip." I took a deep breath, keeping my voice steady. "It's not just a trip. It's my professional achievement. I won this with my skills, not a handout. It's mine." My father's voice hardened. "You're disappointing us. Family means sharing." I gave a bitter laugh. "Sharing? I've shared enough for years. Everything went to Emily while I fended for myself. This is the first time I'm keeping something for me." I ended the call, hands shaking but heart oddly light. I paced my living room, whispering to myself. I said no. I finally said no. The joy didn't last long. The next day, Emily texted, "You're so petty, Rachel. I'm the one who needs that trip. You have everything. You don't get how much I've lost." I didn't reply. For the first time, I didn't feel the need to justify myself. On departure day, I wheeled my suitcase to the airport, heart full of excitement and a twinge of guilt. But on the plane, watching dawn's light stream through the window, I realized this wasn't just a trip. It was my declaration of independence. In Italy, I stood under Tuscany's golden sun, breathing in the scent of ripe grapes. In France, I wandered Paris's elegant streets, music drifting from tiny cafes. In Switzerland, I gazed at the snow-capped Alps, feeling their vastness soothe me. In Spain, I danced to flamenco, feeling truly alive, uncompared, unshadowed. Each photo I took wasn't to make anyone jealous, but to remind myself, "Rachel, you dared to claim something for you." Throughout the trip, my parents called a few times. They didn't ask how I was, only repeated, "You should reconsider, bring Emily along, she's so sad." I replied simply, "I can't." Hanging up, I felt different. This time, no guilt, just relief, because I'd finally set boundaries. On my last night in Barcelona, I sat on the hotel balcony, a glass of red wine in hand, city lights twinkling below. I wrote in my journal, "I said no, and I'll keep saying no to unfairness, to demands, to being a shadow." This trip didn't just take me across continents, it freed me from invisible chains that bound me since childhood. But I didn't know this decision would spark a bigger battle. Because when I returned, Emily had claimed my apartment as her own, and the next tragedy was waiting. They say nothing beats coming home after a long trip, sinking into your familiar chair, breathing your apartment's comforting scent. But for me, the day I returned from Europe, that anticipation turned into a nightmare. I stood at my door, suitcase in tow, still buzzing with excitement. I pictured turning on the light, seeing my tidy apartment as I left it. I'd put fresh flowers in the dining table vase, open my laptop to save my favorite trip photos. But as I turned the key, something felt wrong. The door wasn't locked. I pushed it open, my suitcase clattering behind. The sight froze me. Red high heels, gaudy and expensive, nothing I'd buy, scattered at the entrance. On the sofa, a costly silk blouse was draped carelessly, a heavy perfume lingering in the air. Then the sound of running water from the bathroom. The door swung open, and Emily stepped out, wearing my bathrobe. Her wet hair dripped onto my cherished wood floor. She barely glanced at me, eyes on her phone, and said casually, "Oh, you're back? I thought you were coming tomorrow." My heart clenched. I looked around. My books shoved to a corner, kitchen cabinets flung open with organic food boxes I'd never bought. On the shelf, my family photos were displaced by Emily's handbags. "What are you doing here?" I asked, voice trembling with rage. "Just crashing," she shrugged, toweling her hair. "Mom and Dad gave me the key. I needed a place to stay, and your apartment was empty while you were off gallivanting. It made sense." I was stunned. The key? How did they have my key? I remembered times my mother visited, my father saying he needed a spare for emergencies. And apparently, emergency meant whenever Emily needed something. "This is my home," I said sharply. "No one had the right to give you a key but me." Emily rolled her eyes, her tone dripping with disdain. "Why so dramatic, Rachel? I'm just staying temporarily. You're not exactly struggling. I'm the one who lost a husband and a home." I wanted to scream. "You lost your home because you turned it into your personal stage, and no one could stand it." But I held back, feeling the violation pulse through my veins. That evening, my parents called via video. My mother appeared, her voice syrupy like she was soothing a stubborn child. "Rachel, don't make a fuss. Your sister needs a place to stay during this tough time. Your apartment was empty. What's wrong with her staying a bit?" "Empty?" I gave a bitter laugh. "You think my home's a hotel? I worked my ass off for this place. It's not for anyone to just move in." My father cut in, voice like a hammer. "Rachel, you're too selfish. Family helps each other." Selfish. Always that word. Whenever I claimed my rightful space, I was selfish. I hung up, sitting on my bed. No, my bed. Now cluttered with Emily's suitcase. I pulled my suitcase to a corner, clutching a pillow, sinking to the floor. In the dark, humiliation choked me. This wasn't my apartment anymore. It was Emily's latest trophy in a long line of indulgences. I realized the irony. I'd traveled halfway across the world to find freedom, only to return and lose the smallest freedom, my own home. The days that followed were hell. I'd come home from work to find my things rearranged. The fridge was stuffed with Emily's detox foods, my meal prep boxes shoved to the bottom. When friends visited, Emily strutted out like the host, chirping about my new place. At night, I lay awake, hearing her music blaring from the living room, rage simmering. Every corner of my safe space was invaded. One evening, as I tried to reorganize my books, Emily lounged on the sofa, pouting. "You're so uptight, Rachel. It's just stuff. Chill." I looked at her, fury erupting. "This is my space. If you want to make a mess, find somewhere else. This is my home." She laughed. "Your home? Are you sure? Mom and Dad helped you out. Without them, would you even be this stable?" That hit like a knife to the heart. I knew every penny in this apartment was mine, but to Emily, everything I had was a family favor. That night, I couldn't sleep. On the balcony, I watched the city lights flicker. I thought, if I don't act, I'll lose everything, not just my home, but my right to my own life. A strange resolve rose within me. I'd said no to the Europe trip. Now I'd learned to say no to this blatant invasion. I didn't know that anger was just the prelude to a bigger shock, because soon, I'd discover not only my apartment was taken, but my SUV, the symbol of my freedom, was gone too. They say everyone has a breaking point. I always thought I didn't. For years, I swallowed being overlooked, always second to Emily, forcing smiles and carrying on. But a defining moment proved I was human, with a limit. It came when I went to the garage for my SUV. That morning started normally. I woke early, prepping for an important meeting. I wanted to drive my familiar car, play my favorite music, and center myself after the stress of Emily's invasion. But when the elevator doors opened to the basement, my heart stopped. Parking spot 247, where I paid monthly rent, where my SUV sat faithfully, was empty. No car, no trace, just a cold vacant space. At first, I thought I'd misremembered. I ran through the garage, scanning every row, heart racing. But the more I searched, the surer I was my SUV was gone. Hands shaking, I called my father. He answered after a few rings, voice casual as if discussing the weather. "Oh, the car, we sold it." I froze. "What, you sold it?" "Yeah," he said calmly. "Emily needed money to start over. You have a good job. You'll buy another." In that moment, the world tilted. My apartment being invaded was humiliating enough, but my SUV, it wasn't just a vehicle. It was a symbol of my independence, proof of years of saving and hard work. And now it was gone because Emily needed money. My voice choked. "Dad, that car was in my name. I paid every cent. How could you just do that?" My mother cut in, her voice sweet but venomous. "Rachel, don't make a big deal. It's just a car. Family comes first. Your sister lost her husband, her home. Should she lose her chance to start anew too?" I laughed hollowly, tears burning down my cheeks. "What about me? Have you ever asked what I need?" No one answered. I hung up, collapsing onto the cold garage floor. Years of suppression, of enduring, crashed into that moment. It felt like the world declared, "Rachel, you don't matter. Your efforts can be erased any time." I buried my face in my hands, pain surging like a tsunami. But from that pain, something else rose, fierce, burning, unstoppable. Anger. I thought, if I stay silent, they'll take everything. Not just my car, my home, but my entire life. That afternoon, I returned to my apartment, seeing Emily lounging on the sofa, scrolling her phone. Designer shopping bag sat on the table, receipts intact. A new spa membership card gleamed. "Why are you staring at me like that?" she snapped, defiant. "Where'd you get the money for this?" I asked, voice icy. She shrugged. "Mom and Dad sold your car. They said you'd easily buy another. You shouldn't be so selfish, Rachel. I need pampering after my marriage trauma." I stood frozen. The realization hit like a hammer. They didn't just take my car, they turned it into Emily's healing fund. That night, alone in my bedroom, the light casting shadows on my tired face, I thought back to every dismissal, my award-winning essay, my scholarship, my directorship. Each time I endured, thinking, at least I have my achievements. But now, even my tangible reward, my self-bought SUV, was stolen. A voice in my head roared, "Enough, this is the final straw." The next day I gathered documents. The car purchase contract, registration, bank statements, all proving the SUV was mine. I stuffed them into a black folder, feeling like I was arming for a final battle. Each paper, each bolded name, fueled a strange energy. No more patient Rachel, no more fine Rachel. This was Rachel demanding justice. If you've ever felt your efforts turned into someone else's trophy, you'll understand. That pain doesn't just hurt, it wakes you up. And I was awake. Watching Emily flaunt her new Hermes bag, hearing my mother say, "It's just a car," I knew one thing. This time, I wouldn't let it slide. I didn't tell them my plan. I stayed quiet, observed, collected evidence. To them, I was still docile Rachel. But inside, a fire was raging. And I knew the next chapter of my life wouldn't be about endurance. It would be about fighting back. You might think, when my family took my car, I'd just cry or argue loudly, then let it slide like always. But no, this time I knew I needed more than tears. I needed proof. And what they didn't expect was that I'd been preparing for this fight my whole life. I started with the drawer in my small home office. I jokingly called it the paper graveyard. Inside were stacks of documents, car purchase receipts, insurance contracts, garage payment slips, even service records. I pulled them out, dust flying, but my heart grew clearer. Each paper, each number, was a piece proving the SUV was mine, mine alone. Then I opened my laptop, logging into my bank account. I downloaded 3 years of statements. Numbers don't lie. Every transfer, every saved penny for the car was laid bare. I highlighted key transactions, heart pounding as I saw the final large payment to the dealership. In those moments, I remembered working extra jobs, collapsing exhausted, thinking, "Keep going, Rachel, you'll get your dream car." How bitter that my triumph became Emily's spa voucher. I checked my phone. My father's text was still there. "We sold the car. Emily needs money more than you." I screenshotted it, saving it in a folder labeled Evidence. I added my mother's message, sweet but dismissive. "It's just a car, don't be selfish." Staring at the screen, I choked up. To them, those were casual words. To me, they were vivid proof of injustice. I was an endless reserve while Emily was the one needing protection. After 2 days, I had a thick file. I booked a meeting with a lawyer recommended by a colleague, Mrs. Levine, a specialist in property and family disputes. Her office was in an old red brick building with gleaming glass doors. I walked in, clutching my file, heart racing. Part of me feared she'd laugh. It's just family drama. Who sues over that? But when I set the file on her desk, she didn't laugh. She looked up, eyes sharp behind silver-framed glasses. "Rachel, you've done a paralegal's job," she said, half surprised, half impressed. "I've never seen a client bring such a complete file." I gave a faint smile, but it hurt. Maybe because I've spent my life proving I'm worth something. She flipped through the pages, nodding. "The car's fully registered to you. Bank statements are clear. Your parents' texts confirm the unauthorized sale. This is a solid case, Rachel." They crossed a legal line. I sat still, absorbing her words. Relief washed over me. Someone finally saw the truth. But bitterness lingered. It took a lawyer and hard evidence for my voice to matter. Mrs. Levine looked up, voice measured. "Do you want to proceed? This won't just be a property dispute. It'll be a direct confrontation with your family." I took a deep breath, hands clenching. Images flashed, my mother cradling Emily, my father calling me selfish, Emily wearing my bathrobe in my apartment. I'd endured enough. "Yes," I said firmly, "I want to go through with it, all the way." Driving home, I held the file, feeling both heavy and strange. Heavy, knowing there was no turning back. Strange, because I felt free. For the first time, I wasn't reacting with tears or silence, but with action. I gave a bitter chuckle, thinking, my whole life has been a trail of evidence. Evidence of being ignored, my efforts belittled, always yielding. But now that trail was my weapon. That night, in my apartment, still reeking of Emily's perfume, I felt a fire within. I was stepping into a fight, not just for my car, but for my voice, my right to exist as an independent person. In the mirror, I saw a different me. No longer fine Rachel, no longer Emily's shadow. I saw a woman ready to fight, and this time I wouldn't lose. If you've ever kept receipts to prove your worth, you'll understand my mix of bitterness and liberation. Those papers weren't just numbers, they were proof I was done being dismissed. Then I closed the file, whispering, "The game has changed." I didn't know that as I prepared for the legal battle, a new shock awaited. Emily would soon face an official eviction notice from my apartment, and for the first time, she'd face real consequences. They say a knock on the door can bring joy or dread, depending on who's outside. That morning, when a firm knock echoed, I knew the decisive moment had arrived. Not a delivery, not a neighbor. I opened the door to a sheriff in crisp uniform, holding papers stamped with a red seal. "Is this Rachel Morgan's residence?" he asked, voice firm. "Yes," I replied, head high. My heart raced, but my voice stayed steady. He nodded, then turned to the figure peeking from the bedroom. Emily. Still in pricey pajamas, hair disheveled, mascara smudged like she'd rehearsed for a tragic role. "Emily Morgan?" the sheriff said. "Yes, that's me," she replied, voice faltering. He handed her the papers, his tone cold as steel. "This is an eviction notice. You have 72 hours to vacate this apartment." In that moment, the room seemed to freeze. I stood still, eyes locked on my sister. Emily stared at the papers, then at me, then exploded. "What is this, Rachel?" she screamed, tears instant. "You can't do this to me. I lost my husband, my home, and now you want me on the street?" The sheriff stood impassive, used to such scenes. I stayed silent, letting Emily thrash, slam the sofa, wail like a child. "Rachel, you're my sister," she shrieked. "You're supposed to protect me, not kick me out." I took a deep breath, replying firmly. "No, Emily. I'm not responsible for supporting you forever. This is my apartment. You invaded my privacy. Now I'm taking it back." "Selfish," she yelled. "Mom was right, you only think of yourself." I gave a bitter smile. If protecting what's mine is selfish, then for the first time, I choose selfish. Emily collapsed onto the couch, sobbing into her hands. Those tears had always softened my parents, opened their wallets, even sold my car, but this time I wasn't falling for it. The sheriff set the papers on the table, voice final. "You have 72 hours. I'll return to check. If you don't leave, we'll enforce removal." He nodded to me and left. The door closed, leaving a tense silence. Emily sprang up, lunging toward me, eyes blazing. "You'll regret this, Rachel. Mom and Dad will never forgive you. They'll side with me." "Maybe," I said calmly. "But I don't care anymore. This is my life, and no one's taking it from me again." She stared, stunned, as if she didn't recognize me. To her, I was forever Fine Rachel, the sister who stepped back to let her shine. Today, I tore that role apart. The next 72 hours crawled by, thick with tension. Emily tried every tactic, begging, crying, raging, smashing things. Each time I quietly cleaned up, reclaiming my space, reminding myself, this is mine. My parents called non-stop. My mother's voice choked. "Rachel, are you really so heartless? Kicking your sister out?" My father growled, "You're tearing this family apart. You'll regret this." I didn't argue. I just said, "You sold my car. I have nothing left to lose." When the 72 hours ended, the sheriff returned. Emily stood in the living room, suitcases piled, looking pathetic like a bad drama's heroine. "This is ridiculous. I'm not leaving," she screamed, clutching her new Hermes bag. The sheriff raised an eyebrow. "Want us to remove you now?" Emily looked around, seeing no one to save her, tears streaming. Finally, she dragged her suitcases out, sobbing and hissing, "You'll pay for this, Rachel, I swear." I stood at the threshold, gripping the doorframe. "Good luck, Emily," I said coldly. "This time I'm not coming with you." The door closed. The sound of her suitcase wheels faded, leaving a stifling silence. I sank onto the sofa, my sofa, reclaimed, and cried, not tears of shame but of release. I knew this was just the start of the battle. Emily was gone, but my parents wouldn't give up. They'd try to drag me back into the cycle of sacrifice. But this time I was ready. They say court is where truth is revealed. I think it's where lies are stripped bare. The day I walked into the courtroom, facing my parents and Emily across the aisle, I knew the truth would finally see light. The heavy wooden door closed behind me. I took a deep breath. The room was both solemn and stifling, light streaming through high windows like invisible swords. I sat beside Mrs. Levine, my lawyer, while my parents and Emily sat opposite, tense and resentful. As the trial began, my heart pounded like a war drum. The judge, a silver-haired man with a commanding voice, called for order. "Mrs. Levine, please proceed." My lawyer stood, voice razor-sharp. "Your Honor, this case concerns the unauthorized sale of property. A $30,000 SUV, registered solely to my client, Rachel Morgan, was sold by her parents without consent. The $25,000 proceeds were transferred to a family account and used for Emily Morgan's lavish expenses. We have comprehensive evidence." She presented the thick file, car documents, bank statements, social media screenshots. The judge flipped through, the room silent. I saw my father swallow hard, my mother bite her lip, Emily rolling her eyes, impatient. The judge's voice rang out, "Defense, your response?" My father stood, voice awkward. "Your Honor, this is a family matter. We didn't think our daughter would take us to court. The car, we thought, in a family, everything's shared. Emily needed it, and Rachel's always well off. We meant no harm." At shared, I gave a bitter laugh. I wanted to shout, "Shared? I've shared everything for years, until I had nothing left." But I stayed quiet, letting Mrs. Levine speak. "Shared?" She raised an eyebrow. "If it's shared, why is the car registered solely to Rachel Morgan? If shared, why was the $25,000 withdrawn and used for Emily's Hermes bags and spa memberships? This isn't sharing, it's theft." She placed Emily's Instagram post on the table, showing her at a spa with the caption, "Treat yourself healing." The room buzzed. Emily flushed but stayed defiant. "I deserve to enjoy myself. I went through a painful divorce." The judge banged his gavel. "Order?" In that moment, I saw the raw truth. For years, my parents hid their favoritism with sweet words. Emily played the victim to be forgiven. But in court, before cold documents, it was just facts. They took what wasn't theirs. The judge scanned the file, then looked at my parents. "The car is legally Rachel Morgan's. Selling it without consent is unlawful. Using the proceeds for Emily Morgan's personal expenses confirms misappropriation." He paused, then declared, "The court orders the defendants to pay $40,000, covering the car's value and damages. All legal fees are on the defendants." In that instant, I felt chains fall. My heart pounded, not from fear, but from liberation. I glanced at Mrs. Levine. She gave a subtle nod. Across the room, my mother sobbed, my father paled, and Emily screamed, "This isn't fair! She has everything and I have nothing!" The judge banged his gavel. Court adjourned. I walked out, noon sunlight blinding me, tears falling. Not sad tears, but those of someone finally heard. A thought echoed. Justice isn't just a concept. Today it stood with me. But the joy was fleeting. As I left the courthouse, my father approached, voice thick with anger. "Rachel, you've destroyed this family. For 40,000 you made us criminals." I met his eyes, replying slowly, "No, Dad. You made yourselves that the moment you took what wasn't yours." I walked away, file heavy in my hands, heart lighter than ever. But I knew this wasn't the end. A ruling could make them pay, but it couldn't change their favoritism or stop Emily from seeing me as a resource. And I sensed the storm was just beginning. If you've ever won a battle but knew more awaited, you'll understand. It wasn't peace, but clarity. I had to be ready for the next step. They say overindulgence ruins things, and favoritism is like slow poison. I'd seen that poison seep into my family for years. But it wasn't until a for sale sign stood starkly on my parents' green lawn that I saw its full effect. That house was once their pride. Walls lined with Emily's photos, lavish birthday parties thrown for her, boasts about their talented youngest. For me, it held memories of dinners where my successes were swallowed by Emily's laughter. Now, they had to sell it to cover the $40,000 judgment and mounting debts. I parked my new SUV across the street, watching quietly. A large moving truck sat out front, workers carrying boxes, ornate decor, gilded family photos, all packed away like a lifetime of glamour dismantled. Emily stood on the porch, mascara streaked, clutching the Hermes bag she once flaunted. For the first time, I saw no arrogance. She screamed at our parents, "This isn't fair! It's Rachel's fault, not mine! Why am I suffering?" My father, who always excused her, stayed silent, face creased with exhaustion. My mother sobbed, hugging her, repeating, "You'll get through this. You're still my pride." I sat in my car, a bitter smile forming, pride that cost them their home. Watching them, I felt two conflicting emotions. Part of me was smug. Emily finally faced real failure, no longer cushioned by sweet words or money. But another part felt hollow. This was still my family, where I once dreamed of recognition. Now, with justice on my side, I didn't feel complete satisfaction, just an eerie void. Days later, my parents moved to a small suburban apartment. I visited once, bringing supplies to help settle them. The place had 2 bedrooms, stark white walls, no trace of their old grand home. Emily sat on a chair, dazed, complaining, "This tiny apartment, no balcony, no marble bathtub. How am I supposed to live?" My father sighed, too weary to scold or soothe. My mother kept comforting, "Hang in there, dear. Things will come back." I stood by, almost amused. Even after losing everything, they wouldn't face the truth. Their blind indulgence led them here. Driving away, I lingered in the parking lot, gazing at my new SUV. Sunlight glinted off its paint, a reminder. At least I protected what was mine. But even then, joy wasn't complete. I knew justice was just a bandage. It stopped the bleeding but didn't heal the scars. Years of favoritism left cracks that would never mend. I once dreamed my parents would look at me and say, "Rachel, you make us proud." Instead, they wept for Emily, mourned their lost house, and called me heartless. I recalled Emily's eyes when the sheriff served her eviction notice. For the first time, I saw fear. Not her usual crocodile tears, but real emotion. Maybe this loss was big enough to teach her life doesn't always have mom and dad to fix things. Would she change? I didn't know. Part of me doubted, part hoped. If she did, maybe this family still had a chance to heal. That evening, in my apartment, I reviewed the lawsuit file. Each page, each number, recalled my journey. I'd won, but I'd also lost the illusion that family always protects you. Maybe true growth isn't winning, but facing the void left after victory. If you've ever tasted justice but still felt heavy, you'll understand. It's both freeing and empty. I realized what I'd sought wasn't just money or property, it was recognition, and that I might never get from my parents. Closing the file, I told myself, this isn't the end. The story didn't stop with losing the house or the payout. Emily, in her desperation, would surely try to cling again, and I knew more storms loomed ahead. People think family battles have two outcomes: complete cutoff or unconditional forgiveness. But one fateful evening, when Emily knocked on my door, I realized there's a third path, both cold and warm, painful yet necessary. That night, I was at my desk, the lamp casting light on my unfiled lawsuit papers. The knock came, not bold or entitled like usual, but slow, hesitant, almost trembling. I opened the door. Before me wasn't the usual Emily in designer dresses, perfect blonde curls, phone gleaming. Instead, a girl in a faded hoodie, face gaunt, eyes swollen, nails chipped. "Rachel," her voice quivered. "I'm so scared, sis." I stood silent, staring into eyes once blazing with arrogance, now filled with panic. All her life, Emily never admitted fear. She lived like the world revolved around her, believing our parents would clean up any mess. But today, with their house sold and her rich friends gone, she stood here, vulnerable and lost. I stepped back, letting her in. Emily collapsed onto the sofa, hands clenched. "I have nothing left. No husband, no home, no money. Every morning I wake up empty." Hearing that, part of me wanted to laugh. Finally, you know what empty feels like. But another part softened. She was still my sister. And more than anyone, I knew the sting of being overlooked, dismissed, falling into a pit of despair. My mind offered two familiar choices: slam the door, cut her off; open my arms, take her in, sacrifice again. But then, a new thought sparked. Why only two options? I could offer help without draining myself. I could give her a chance, not money, not privilege, but a real shot at standing on her own. "Emily," I said firmly, "I won't give you money. I won't let you live off my apartment, but I can give you an opportunity." She looked up, eyes mixing shock and hope. "A friend of mine runs a small logistics company in Austin," I continued. "They need a receptionist. Simple work. Answer phones, file papers, assist clients. No glamour, no spa memberships, no Range Rover. But the pay's enough to live, and it's a real start." Emily froze. "You mean I have to work, like actually work?" "Yes," I nodded. "If you want change, this is the only way. No one's going to carry you forever." Silence fell. I saw her wrestle, pride versus desperation, indulgence versus survival. Finally, tears fell. I'll try," she whispered. The first time I heard those words from her. "I'll try." I nodded slightly. "Good. I'll call my friend tomorrow. But remember, this is an opportunity, not a favor. You have to hold on to it." After she left, I sat alone. No smugness, as I'd once imagined. Not full pity either. A strange relief. For the first time, I wasn't the sacrificer or the villain. I chose a third way: conditional compassion. I realized family doesn't always mean indulgence or blind forgiveness. Sometimes, real love is letting others face reality, letting them learn to stand on their own. The next day, I called my friend. Weeks later, Emily started the job. Her text is still on my phone. "Got my first paycheck today. Not much, but it's mine. Thanks, Rachel." Reading it, I smiled faintly. A spark of hope flickered. Maybe, after all, Emily had a chance to change. If you've ever faced the choice between forgiving or cutting off, you'll understand this moment. Sometimes, the third path, compassion with boundaries, is the only way to save yourself and still offer salvation. I put the phone down, stood by the window, city lights glowing. But I knew the story wasn't over. My parents, Linda and Robert, hadn't learned a thing, and soon they'd try to pull me back into the old cycle. They say big change starts small. For me, it wasn't the lawsuit victory or the new SUV, but a short text on my phone. "Got my first paycheck. Not much, but it's mine. Thanks, Rachel." Emily. I sat in my apartment, staring at the words. My heart slowed, then curved into a smile. For years, I'd known Emily's texts as demands, complaints, or boastful photos. Now, for the first time, she sent something humble, not asking for more, but sharing a small, honest achievement. I closed my eyes, recalling the night she knocked, trembling, saying, "I'm so scared, sis." In that moment, I faced the harsh choice: cut her off or embrace her, sacrificing again. I chose the third path: compassion with limits. Now, seeing this text, I knew it wasn't in vain. Justice was restored. I was no longer their endless reserve. But there was also a chance, however small, to mend things. Weeks later, I met Emily at a cafe near her workplace. She arrived 10 minutes late, not from shopping, but finishing a client call. Through the window, I saw her hurry in, hair neatly tied, in a simple white blouse. Still a bit clumsy, but far from the designer princess of old. "Sorry I'm late," she said, setting a worn canvas bag on the chair. I raised an eyebrow, smiling. "First time you've apologized for being late." She gave an awkward laugh. "Guess I'm changing bit by bit." We talked. She described her receptionist job: simple but demanding, answering phones, handling tough clients, filing papers. "It's exhausting," she admitted. "But at the end of the month, when I get my paycheck, I feel real." I nodded, my heart softening. It was the first time I saw her value labor. I wasn't sure it would last, but the seed was planted. My parents were different. After losing the house, they moved to a small suburban apartment. I visited once. The bare white walls held no space for Emily's old glamorous photos. My mother still complained, "Rachel, if you hadn't sued, we wouldn't be in this mess." My father stayed sullen, eyes occasionally flashing blame. I sat across them, calm. "It's not the lawsuit. It's because you indulged Emily until you lost everything. This is the price of favoritism." They fell silent. Maybe they understood but were too proud to admit it. I no longer needed their validation. The lawsuit gave me justice, time gave me release. One afternoon, after leaving the office, I drove my SUV along the coast. Salty wind tousled my hair, the ocean's scent filling the cabin. I played music, letting melodies blend with the waves. On the passenger seat was a photo from my Europe trip, me, arms wide in a Tuscan vineyard, face tilted to the blue sky. I whispered, "I'm free." Free from biased gazes, from the fine sister role, from chains demanding endless sacrifice. But recalling Emily's text, I added, "And I gave her a chance to be free too." I realized forgiveness doesn't mean erasing pain or forgetting. It's simply giving others a chance to take responsibility for their lives. And Emily, with that short text, proved she could, at least once, walk on her own. As for me, I'd keep driving forward. The coastal road stretched endlessly, the sunset painting the water gold. I didn't know what lay ahead, whether Emily would truly change, whether my parents would ever see their mistakes. But I knew one thing: I'd chosen right for myself. If you followed me from the first chapters, you've seen this wasn't just a fight for a car or apartment. It was a journey to reclaim myself, from someone overshadowed to someone who dared say no, demand justice, and finally, offer measured compassion. I stopped at a scenic overlook, stepping out. The sea breeze roared, salt tingling my skin. I spread my arms like in that Tuscan photo and closed my eyes. No more craving recognition, no fear of being dismissed. Just me, a new Rachel, strong, free. Deep down, I hoped one day Emily would have this moment too. No Range Rover, no lavish wedding dress, just the freedom of her own life. Maybe you see now, my journey wasn't just a legal battle, but a fight to reclaim my worth. From a girl overlooked, pushed aside at every family celebration, I learned to stand, say no to unfairness, and protect what's mine. Justice may stop the bleeding, but only by setting boundaries did I truly heal. This story isn't just about favoritism or family wounds. It reminds us, sometimes love isn't blind protection, it's daring to let others face their consequences. Compassion needs boundaries, and mutual respect is the true foundation of family. If my story resonates, leave a comment with your own experience. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more stories. This journey is over, but many more await us to explore together.